ahead.
So my mother-in-law was diagnosed with MS maybe 20 plus years ago when my husband was in high school. And it's the progressive form of MS. So I think for her, it's really been something she's lived with and struggled with for the last 20 years. It doesn't come and go. It's just been progressively getting worse. And so, somewhere in that journey early on, she lost the ability to have sort of feeling on the right side of her body, excuse me. So she is in a wheelchair. She needs assistance to do most of her activities. She is a wonderful, thoughtful, caring human being who is completely present and fully, with us and fully part of our lives and part of her grandkids' lives and our children's lives. But this piece of her that, unfortunately is broken has really impacted her ability to functionally and physically be present in the same way. And so, for us, we are privileged children. When we all, as a spouse, when I came into her life, her 3 children had the benefit of her having extremely generous and kind siblings who had been taking care of her, both financially and physically, and had just really created a wonderful life for her in Wisconsin. She had caregivers and others, but as her disease progressed, the need for her care progressed, and it started to become something where you needed somebody around the clock, and it just got harder to find that level of care where they live in Wisconsin. And our journey kind of began at that point about, I would call it like 10 years ago, where, first there was a move to the West Coast and some care that was provided by long-term caregivers that we had in our family that had been, caring for other family members. Then she moved to Las Vegas. And I think on this journey, her children, and by extension, those of us that have married her children, have really tried to get involved in her care. And there was a point in time where Adam and I really wanted to take it on, and we felt like it was our responsibility. And her, like I mentioned, her siblings are all older than her, and they've been doing a great job taking care of her, but it was really time for us to step in. And that's where we started to struggle. She lived in Las Vegas at the time. We looked at all options. We looked at options like, does it make more sense for her to live somewhere with assistance and not in her own home with caregivers? And we did try that. And that didn't work, just given what her specific ailments were. Not all assisted care homes are the same. And for her to be able to be lifted and physically taken care of, we just weren't able to find the right level of care. And then became the revolving door of caregivers in her home city. So it's been hard to find kind of consistent ongoing care, coupled with the fact that we live in California. And while we do have some incredible family members on the ground who now today do all of the work, it was impossible for all of us to share in this caregiving together. It really became wherever she lived, whoever was there around her was really responsible. And so when she was in Wisconsin, that was her daughter who lived there. In Las Vegas, Adam's brother lives there, and they take care of her along with our great aunts. And when she was in Los Angeles, it was, her aunt and uncle down here, her brother and sister, our aunt and uncle down here too. So getting integrated into the care is really hard. And then there's kind of levels of care. There's physical care, but there's also sort of all the administrative care. And I think that's a place where I really felt like I could chip in and was excited to be the person who learned all about Medicare and learned about how to, figure out what her health insurance was and how do we make sure she has the right doctor and how do we communicate with those doctors and who's taking her to the appointments. And the more I got into it, the more confused I got. Yeah. So as I mentioned, a lot of times when there's a big team, it still falls on one person to be the captain. And I think, when each place that she's lived, she's had someone who's kind of the captain of that care. As the next generation wanted to get involved, her children and their spouses, we kind of needed to have a captain. And I think having that captain be remote is difficult. And so figuring out who could organize all of the information in a way that could actually be shared with other people so that people could swap in and out. Someone could go to a doctor's appointment, someone could take her to therapy, or someone could make sure that the physical therapist is coming on the right days. You can't really split up that labor because there was no way to collaborate. And so the other piece we were dealing with is just a generational divide. So again, her siblings are all older than her and extremely integrated in her care. And are tech savvy as best they can be for being in their 70s and 80s. But getting everyone to I was even just looking for things like Google Drive and Google Docs and like just collaborative ways that we could all see the same information. And so if it was as best as I could, we tried to use some of the general tools that people use, but it was a lot of text chains and email conversations and picking up the phone and calling. And with people working and, kind of being very busy, it was just hard to collaborate in that way. And that became our biggest burden for the team really functioning in any way. It's a human being. How do you stay emotionally connected to that human being? I mean, even not even caregiving, and I think this is why the sandwich generation is so interesting. Like, even as two adults taking care of a child, we forget that we have an emotional connection to each other while we have a child. There's a lot of logistics. Where did she go to dance class? Did the homework get finished? Did we do this? Did someone do the dishes? And we've got these things on the calendar. It becomes very easy to forget emotionally that there's a relationship between two people or a relationship with that child. And I think the same goes for caregiving, almost more easily, unfortunately, when, it's sort of like tactically you have so much to do, it's hard to stay connected. And I think for us, we live far away from her. So, it's really just FaceTimes and it's hard. And she's not mobile in the same way. So I think a lot of our conversations just feel stilted, or, we'd love to be able to see her more and travel there more, but it gets hard to kind of maintain that level of emotional connection.